I call to order the City Council meeting for October 18th, 2021. Everyone please rise as Councilman Villauer says a prayer.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we gather today with hearts full of gratitude for this beautiful fall day, all the blessings that we receive, and for everything that this community means to us. And we thank you especially for all those public servants that serve so dedicated to us here in the community. Want to have a special hand of healing and comfort for those that are grieving. We think especially of our own Connie Cutler from the police department, suffering the loss of her daughter recently. So we ask that she has your hand of hope and comfort and healing about her. And now we ask that you give us the wisdom to do decisions that are pleasing to you. And all God's people said, Amen.
Will our finance officer please call the roll?
Okay. Bueller? Here. Danforth? Here. Pauline?
Here.
Paulson? Here. Shuddy?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum established. With that, the chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. With that, we'll open. This is a time for public comments. Is anyone here to address the council on something that is not on the agenda? Councilman Villauer.
Actually, I would. Thank you, Mayor. Many people probably don't know the name anymore, but Marvin West, a longtime public servant and developer here in the community, 99 years and 11 months. He would have turned 100 next month. Passed away recently. And for those that have been around Watertown a long time, Marv and his partner Laverne Zamo, a lot of development in the community. They are where the mall is. They were part owners in the mall originally. A lot of the development in that part of town is attributable to them. They started the Northridge edition as well in years past. They were also the starters of the Wheel Inn here in town. A lot of people probably don't know that or remember that. And Marv actually served on the Planning Commission back in the late 70s and early 80s. So longtime servant development leader here in the community, passed away last week.
Thank you. Anyone else here for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. And the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councilman Villauer, seconded by Councilman Shuddy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item A on the agenda is an application for a new retail wine and cider license to Hy-Vee Incorporated. For this, we will start by learning about this from our finance officer, Kristen Bobzien.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. This is actually an application for the new retail wine and cider license located at Hy-Vee. Public notice was given, as well as the location has been confirmed with community development. So other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. The chair will open a public hearing, ask if there is anyone here, or are there any written comments or anyone here to testify in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to testify against? I will close the public hearing and take it up for council action. Is there a motion for the approval of the application?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. And we'll open it up for council questions or comments. Councilman Danforth.
Kristen, I see the next item also is another application from the same. What's the difference between the two, if you would? And then secondly, historically we have, and I'm not sure whether it's by requirement or by proper term, or our wishings that they could not have these sales in an open area within their stores. So is that changed in this whole process from where maybe it's been historically when I was previously on the council?
Okay, thank you, Councilman Danforth. In terms of the license, these are two separate ones. State has a wine and cider, and then there's your malt beverage aspect. So the wine and cider is kind of your cider beers, and then the basically any other type of wine. Whereas the malt beverage is just the malt beverage, and then there's a South Dakota farm wine. So those are two requirements by the state. So if they want to sell those two types, then they have to apply for two separate licenses. In terms of the location and in the past, yes, the past, I don't know if we want to say past practice, but the past standard has been that there's a separate entrance. Recently, the council took action to allow for it into county fair. Since then, we've had multiple asks in terms of convenience stores and then Hy-Vee situations like that. So, but to my understanding, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, there's never been anything that legally has not allowed for those sales to happen. It's just been the approval process in the past.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to approve the application for the license. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B on the agenda is an application for a new retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license to Hy-Vee. For this, we will go back to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzien.
Thank you, Mayor. The same with this one. The notice was given on this for the hearing, as well as the location has been approved by community development. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to testify against? Seeing none, well, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for council action to approve the application. Moved by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Open it up for comments or questions from the council. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the application for the license, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item C is the 2022 budget appropriation for the city of Watertown. This is going to be technically two different motions, but for that we will go to our finance officer to explain it. One will be an adoption of the proposed budget, and number two will be the first reading. So we will have actual action for the adoption. First reading doesn't require action. So, Finance Officer Kristen Bobzien.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we did the public hearing for the 2022 budget last week. So with that, for the item one, the adoption of the 2022 proposed budget, the proposed book was attached to the agenda, as well as it's still available for viewing here at the finance office. The only change that is in here that was a little bit discussed, but probably not completely, was that the original book had $150,000 in the airport for cleaning services. During the budget hearing, we discussed removing that would not be in there. City Manager Amanda and I discussed that maybe we should leave a little bit in there. So within this proposed book, there is $10,000 that has remained in the cleaning services line item, just to give that flexibility with only adding the one custodian position. It'll give us a little bit better idea. So that's the only change that is within the book, the proposed budget for 2022 based off of the hearing.
All right, thank you very much. In order to talk about the first reading, I think it's appropriate to first take the adoption of the budget. So the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the 2022 proposed budget.
So moved.
Motion by Villauer, seconded by Tupper. All those in favor of, any discussion on the adoption? Councilman Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to bring up the utilities again, because I kind of want to force the discussion to happen now. I'm sick of hearing the same discussion year after year, as I think most people are, and I'm actually sad that there's no representative from the utilities here tonight. But I want to force this discussion to happen with the utilities, and I don't think that's going to happen if we just keep handing them money without having that discussion. I mean, my suggestion would be hold the payment until we have that discussion, but I don't know where the rest of my council members sit.
Okay. City Manager Mack?
I can provide a little bit of clarification. I got an email from Steve Lehner over the weekend. There were some questions during the budget hearing regarding the rental fees, and this was information that I wasn't necessarily aware of. So the street light charges and fire hydrants are not rentals. So the city is paying for a portion of installation and maintenance of the street lights themselves and the energy they consumed. They are owned, operated, and maintained by WMU. And then secondly, the hydrant charge is a fire protection charge that includes upsizing water tower storage pipes and a portion of the hydrant cost to help the city fight fires. WMU is open and willing to come in and have a conversation and talk through these charges, talk through priorities, figure out where we can maybe come together on some things and partner. But that's the information I have tonight.
Thank you. And the chair, I will just make it clear, the adoption doesn't mean that we will be approving the full budget. The adoption just means that we can talk about the budget more. If I'm understanding, this was advised to us by our city attorney, Matt Roby.
Yeah, I was actually just going to comment on the actual payment of the dollars. The budget is the budget. The warrants that go out every month, I believe the payment is made to utilities. Kristen can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, those payments that go out throughout the year of 2022, if the council wanted to take issue with any of those at that time, you could do so. I mean, this is a time you could do so, but you could also in the future before the payments get approved.
Okay.
And then the other piece, yes.
So we will just continue discussing because all of item C, even though it's two different things, we'll just discuss all of item C as the 2022 proposed budget. Councilman Danforth.
Couple things. First, to Colin's point, I agree we need to have an understanding with a better understanding amongst us or between us and the utilities. But that needs to happen well in advance of us getting ready to approve a budget. And I think what we need to do is we need to do our budgeting like we have in the past, and we need to sit down and we need to gain a full understanding of exactly what we're paying, what they're paying, why, justify it, and see where we can get in that process. So next year at this time, we have that behind us. Now, if anything happens in between, that's the decision of this council. But, you know, those are things that this is a hard time to push that issue right now when we're looking to, you know, do a first read on our budget. So I think that's something that has to come later. I do have a question in regards to the current budget. We had spent a lengthy amount of time discussing a position to be added. Was it to be added or kept within the budget for the forestry? Did that change at all?
City Manager Mack.
So what was proposed was one additional park maintenance employee, and then I believe Councilman Bueller recommended adding a forestry employee as well. What is presented only includes the park maintenance.
So as presented.
As presented.
As presented,
Yep.
okay.
I did visit with Director Kelly, and should council want to add an additional staff to the park department, as discussed last week, his preference would be a forestry position, and the cost of that's about $74,000.
Any follow-up on that, Councilman Danforth?
None of that specifically, but I do have a question for Matt, if that's okay. Here. If we look right now in our discussion, if we have any major changes on a first read, does that affect the second read? It does, doesn't it? So we really do need to hammer things out. Well, hopefully they've already been hammered out at this point.
We can always call a special meeting as well.
Right,
No.
right.
And I believe it's the end of November, correct? Or November 1st.
That's correct. The budget does need to be approved by the end of November, but you are correct that if there's any significant changes from a first reading to a second reading, then yes, it would require us to bring it back for another first reading.
Circle back to the previous topic of conversation. Councilman Bueller, I believe, has a comment.
Thank you. Just want to be clear, yes, my request there was a request for a park maintenance person, and that request was in the budget, correct? My thought again was a forester and the addition of that person. If our intention is not to put that into the budget, I think there was some discussion. I probably need a little clarity on what options we have. Now, I know we talked about outsourcing some of the tree trimming, the lawn mowing, the weed, taking care of the weeds, that kind of stuff. But I just am curious. It sounded like we were going to just wait a while and kind of see what's going on. I'd like some clarity. I want to be able to go back to the Park and Rec Board and explain why we don't want to add a person that they desperately need. I just want to know why we're not doing. I want to be able to say, well, hey man, we can look at this in 6 months, and then there'll be 6 months without this person. What's our next step if we want to add somebody?
For an answer, we'll go to our finance officer, Kristen Babzine.
So within the 2022 proposed budget, there's $25,000 in consulting outside resources available for the forestry department, and then there was also $25,000 put into the park system budget, and that was for the outsourcing of the mowing. Currently, as it sits right now, no, there's only the one park maintenance position. The council, though, at any time has the ability to change that budget by doing a budget supplement throughout the year. So if it is proposed and it stays as it is, at the early part of next year, this spring, if the council and City Manager Mack agree that that's what we need to do, it can still be done. It can be done outside of the budget process.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Councilman Paulson? Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Defers to Councilman Bueller.
Sorry, just an afterthought, I guess. So the next step would be to set up a meeting with you folks, the staff, with Amanda, I'm assuming you, Kristen. And then we would make that proposal and take it back to the council to add an additional person.
Well, if we follow through what the recommendation was, the next step is to do the organizational study and really look at organizational strategic planning. And through that, then a proposal could come forward with adding more people, subtracting people across the organization.
Do we anticipate a study of that nature anytime soon?
Yes, it's in the proposed budget. I intend to put RFPs out before the end of the year so that we can start in January.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify why I'm saying what I'm saying about the utilities. This has been an ongoing discussion for years, pretty much since their adoption of their executive board, essentially. And I guess I'm struggling to understand where they're hiding behind their user fees being low, but then essentially putting a tax on the city using our taxpayer dollars. And that's where I disagree with this. And I don't think people realize how much money they have in reserves, which they need. I understand that, but it keeps growing. And they're punishing developers, which are costing the developers a lot of money, and construction companies. In turn, those costs are also being passed along to our taxpayers. And I don't think people are realizing that they're hiding behind this low fee, and there's these hidden fees all over that they're getting away with that no one's ever discussing. And that's why I'm bringing this up, because it gets really frustrating to see that on the other side of things, where they refuse to work with the contractors and be reasonable. They're refusing to work through these supply issues with contractors and developers. And it's just getting frustrating. They have refused to work with the city, specifically on the stormwater utility that our previous mayor tried to pass. They refuse to have those discussions with us. And I think we're just at a point that we need to start having these discussions, and a real discussion, because we sit here every year struggling through our budget and what we can and can't have. And we're giving them $900,000 a year for this tax. And that's where I just disagree with it.
Any further questions or comments? With that, the motion is to adopt the 2022 proposed budget. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Item D is an authorization to adjust Brad Miles'
Mayor.
pay upon.
Mayor.
Oh,
We
sorry.
need to do the
Oh,
first
sorry,
reading.
sorry. Now, okay, thank you. We're on for the first reading of ordinance number 21-41 for the 2022 city budget appropriation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So with this, the first reading, the adoption of the budget would encompass all the funds. Enterprise funds are not included in the city ordinance for the appropriations. So this will be our first reading. All the numbers basically are spelled out in the proposed book, but in the ordinance, you will just see per department a total, and that's how the ordinance reads. So this is what the departments will need to stick to for 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on the first reading of the budget? Excuse me, Councilman Vilhauer.
Just one question, Chris, and I assume that, and I didn't look at the budget that closely, I assume that what we're anticipating for property tax revenues jives with what we approved just the meeting before with our, whatever we called it, to the county.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Vilhauer. Normally, this would be the time that we would certify our property tax levy to the county. With the change of our budget timeline, that was actually done, I believe, back in September, which seems very long ago, but it's not. But yes, that has already been done, but I did keep it on the ordinance just to kind of allow it to stay in its normal way that it looks, so.
Okay, so in other words, what we
It
approved is.
matches, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll close the first reading. Now we'll move on to agenda item D, an authorization to adjust Brad Miles' pay upon his promotion to wastewater operations supervisor. To learn more, we will go to our city manager, Amanda Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an internal promotion. The wastewater operations supervisor position has been open for a little while. We have someone leaving, really great candidates. Fortunately, we have an internal candidate that meets all the criteria and will do a great job. Our personnel manual requires any placement on the matrix above step 7 to be approved by the council, and we're recommending placing him at step 8.
Thank you. Finance Officer Kristen Bubsy, nothing? All right. Any council comments or questions on this? Oh, yeah, we need a motion first, sorry. Moved by Councilman Paulson to authorize this pay promotion, and seconded by Councilman Schutte. So now, are there any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of authorizing the pay promotion for Brad Miles, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item E is authorization for the Fire Ambulance Department to reclassify the administrative assistant position to an EMS compliance officer. We'll start by going to our fire chief, Don Rowland.
Thank you, Mayor. This position will be a certified ambulance compliance officer for the city. The position will be responsible for maintaining the department's federally mandated compliance program, monitoring compliance, specialized advanced life training, and management for the department. This is a unique position in that it needs to have operational authority over our paramedics up to the battalion chief level for the purposes of EMS compliance. This position has also been recommended and approved by McGrath, which is our third-party HR consultant that reviews, approves, and grades our positions. Just a little bit of information on the responsibilities that I'll let Scott, our assistant chief, touch on.
So as you can see, this is a compliance and training officer. So what does compliance mean? Compliance is a federally mandated requirements that are put on us as being the ambulance service. We have to adhere to CAECO, so we're certified ambulance compliance officer or positions. This is put on to us by Medicare and other insurance companies that we deal with for our billing and so forth. So with that position, they'll develop and chair the compliance committee. They periodically revise, update, and expand compliance program as needed. They supervise and evaluate the EMS crews in the field to assist with the performance evaluation. They perform internal audits as well as schedule external reviews pertaining to our CAECO. They monitor regulatory, legal, and procedural issues that affect compliance. They serve as the department's HIPAA compliance specialist, and they interpret and apply billing and compliance policies and procedures to ensure compliance in department orders, rules, and regulation practices and procedures. So that's just a sampling of some of the duties. There's a lot more that goes to that. I don't want to be here all night to list all the duties for you on the compliance side. Also then it's a training officer. So this position as a training officer will provide the curriculum planning and instructional development and implementation and evaluation of the EMS programs and training. They're responsible for the accurate record keeping of training and education of participants and responsible for ensuring the training education program standards are practiced and meet and exceed the national registries. So as being paramedics, we are bound to national standards to maintain our certification and our licensure as paramedics. So this position will help make sure that we do that. Also, the position will handle our specialized training. So we talk about our high risk and low frequency calls. So that's where our specialist calls in. In City of Watertown, if you have a cardiac episode, you've got the best. What we don't have very often is pediatric calls, little children, stuff like that. So it's a great thing for our community. So we make sure we get specialized training and training more on those areas. So this compliance officer and training officer will be specialized trainer for that. Normally we would have to bring in a outside adjunct instructor, and that costs us about $5,000 to $6,000 just to bring that person in. So that could be a savings for the department and the city that way. They're also assist in writing and the EMS policies and protocols and procedures with regards to the training and education and safety of our ambulance service. And it helps us to meet one of our core values, which is service excellence, which the city citizens expect and deserve.
And there's just one other note to that. This will also serve as a firefighter paramedic, one more boot on the ground to meet the NFPA 1710 initial full alarm assignment that we're currently trying to strive for. And obviously, I think most people will realize that the ISO Class 2 level is something that we continue to strive and meet all the time. So we will not be adding any more staff. We are currently at 39 full-time employees. We will continue to be 39 full-time employees.
Thank you. Would you please stay there for the time being while I go to our city manager, Amanda Mack?
Yes.
For further commentary.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad Chief Rowland touched on the number of employees. I'd also like to add that the role is currently being filled through the use of overtime. So we have our current firefighter paramedics who are filling in the role and utilizing our overtime dollars for that. So it makes sense to try and fill this need right now. We'd like the position to start November 1st. It was calculated into the budget for 2022 as well, so it's something that's been planned.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for council action to authorize the reclassification.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Now I will open it up for council questions or comments. We'll go to Councilman Tupper.
Being we're not adding anybody, I mean, how are we filling this without adding anybody? Or another thing is, who is gonna, evidently you have somebody in mind already that's qualified, so.
Correct, Randy. Thanks for that question. We currently have 39 full-time employees. 38 were firefighter paramedics, and that one position was an office specialist 3, which was not a paramedic firefighter. So right now we have a temporary full-time position that we're not going to fill into next year. So that position will move into a current full-time employee position.
So that was part of the gal that used to work in the office. I mean, you're not.
Yep,
You're
that's
not
correct.
taking over that position. You're just. Okay. Thank you.
Filling it internally. Yep.
Councilman Paulson, did you, that was your question as well? All right. Councilman Danforth.
Looking at what was being done from an administrative assistant standpoint and looking how you're defining this now, and I don't know if this is an Amanda question or you, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Who's covering all the administrative needs that you previously had then? How's that getting done?
Chief Rowland?
Well, thank you, Mike, Councilman Danforth. We currently have been fulfilling that for a while now internally, and you know, along with a lot of the software we have right now and all the data entry that's being implemented and done by our staff, we continue to do that. Not that that isn't something that is needed, but that position that's going to be, that person taking over the position will take on some of those duties as well to maintain that need. So at this time, I don't see any real need in the foreseeable future when it comes to that support system.
Any follow-up, Councilman Danforth? City Manager Mack, did you want to comment on this?
I did. That was a really great question. It's something I pushed Chief Rowland pretty hard on when he first proposed this. Having been without an assistant for quite some time, I understand the importance of that role, but they've got it handled and are comfortable with that workload.
So now we know the qualities of a good question is one that Amanda would ask. So,
She does that.
Chief Rowland, did you want to comment on this topic? On this?
I'm good to go. Thank you.
Finance Officer Bob Zine would like to comment on this before I go to you, Councilman Tupper.
The only other piece to add to this, thank you, Mayor, is that I think it was, about a year and a half ago that we actually started to outsource our billing. That was the other piece that the position of the administrative assistant was doing, was actually the actual billing process as well. And I believe it was a year and a half, 2 years ago that we actually started to outsource, and Image Trend does the actual billing for the ambulance. So that changes that a little bit too. So they wouldn't continue to do that work either.
Thank you. Councilman Tupper.
Being I sit on the Fire Advisory Board, I know this has been talked about for a number of years doing this. And this person won't be, you know, as you said, boots on the ground. That won't be his primary job, his or hers. He'll be boots on the ground if needed, correct?
Again, that'll meet that NFPA 17 initial full arm assignment, 8-minute response, and they can respond from home as well.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, the motion is to authorize the reclassification. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We will now move on to old business. Is there any old business from the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Any new business from the council?
I do have one quick one.
Councilman Tupper.
I believe that our senior center has moved over to their new facility. I don't believe 60s Plus Dining has been able to yet, but I know the senior center did move over the weekend, whether or not they're all set up and going again. But thanks to Mr. Craig and giving them that facility to use, and better things to come for them. So,
Councilman Buehler.
I do have a comment. Thank you, Mayor. Just to update on, you kind of maybe remember the situation we have with the 55 Plus Dining. We procured a lot of their used equipment. And I just wanted to update everybody that I did talk to Director Kelly at the Park and Rec Department in order to remind him to pick that equipment up. So hopefully we're getting, you know, we have uses for that, I believe, at the zoo and some other locations for the Park and Rec Department. So they've left some of that equipment. That's something we got to make sure we follow up on and get that cleared out of there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Buehler. Councilman Danforth.
This is really, I'm not sure if it's old or new, but we talked about it, I believe, last Wednesday about having a work session on TIFs. I did get a phone call today regarding some questions and concerns about our use of TIFs. And so I think that not only would that be good on our behalf to go through that, I think it would be good for the public as well to understand that, you know, a little better and what the risks are, pros and cons, that type of thing. So, did that something that we had agreed that we would do with a work session on that?
I believe so. I've had some preliminary conversations with Mark at the WDC. we're meeting on Friday to kind of, we meet once a month anyway, but that'll be one of the topics of discussion. Who will be providing that training? When do we want to do that? He thought it'd be helpful for some of his board members as well, who may be new or not real familiar with it. So probably sometime in November, we'd look at
That'll be
doing
great.
that.
I think I know it'll be helpful for me again to revisit that, and certainly in light of how we're using those more frequently now than what we have in the past, and plus for the public with the questions. So, thank you.
Councilman Shetty.
Yes, on that same note, I've had a question brought to me, and so with the number of years, does it have to be 20 years? Can it be less years than 20? And so just questions like that have came to me as well from some others. So I would absolutely agree with the work session on that.
Thank you. Any further, Councilman Bueller?
Just a quick comment, thank you, Mayor. I have, if you want, take a look on YouTube. There's a lot of city governments, there's a lot of people that are kind of experts in this whole TIF field. And I, on a couple of occasions over time, have looked at that, and it's been helpful. I will say, I've read a lot of that, and it's still kind of confusing. But that's just me. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Mack, did you have anything to say?
I do have a couple of items. I just want to remind everyone that the November 1st meeting on the agenda will be the CMAR contract. So it's kind of been being vetted out between the legal teams. We also intend to bring the union contracts for your approval on November 1st. And then lastly, I see that our IT director, Spencer, is participating remotely. This is his last council meeting. And I just want to thank him for his years of service, and I'm really mad at him for leaving. But wish him well and know it's an opportunity that is going to be great for him and his family, and very big shoes to fill. We're in the process of reviewing that role as we do when anyone leaves, and figure out what we do next. So thank you, Spencer, and if you want to come downstairs and say hi to everyone, you sure can do that too.
Spencer, and this is the mayor, and I'd just like to thank you as well. You've been great to work with my time here in the city. I know I would speak for all of us. You've been a fabulous resource and a class act all the way. So you will be missed, but we don't hold it against you for making the right decision for your family. Well, maybe we hold it a little bit against you, but
I definitely.
but thank you very much, Spencer. Any further new business? Any liaison member reports? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I sat in on the airport board meeting at noon today. Just a few things to report from that meeting. As I think everybody knows, because it's been publicly reported, the DOT is not reopening the bidding process for the EAS contract. So we will be working with Denver Air Connections until, is it June of 2023? It's sometime mid-2023.
Yeah, I think April.
Or April.
So about a year from now, they'll rebid it, and then it gets awarded in March or April of 23.
Okay. But just a comment from Todd Sari, airport manager, said they are doing a great job out there. So if we think that we're getting shortchanged by having Denver Air Connections, that is not the case necessarily. Few as far as numbers, we have had 11,961 employments through September versus take 2020 out of the picture, but compare that to 11,681 in 2019 for the entire year. So we've already exceeded where we were 2 years ago with our employments this year. So, fantastic numbers. Realistically, 15,000, 16,000, somewhere in there, probably for the year this year. And of those of us in the council going back a number of years know where we were number of years ago at 0. So anyway, and it's a great potential for growth. I mean, the question was asked by one of the board members, is this pent up demand that we're seeing, the big numbers? And the answer really is probably no. It's just a lot different options that we're providing, service that we're providing, price fares that are being offered. So it's a combination of things that are, attributing or can be attributed to that increase in numbers. But yet we're still barely tapping the potential out there for what I was referred to as the catch basin for, people that live in the serviceable area as it's being defined, that we're just barely scratching the surface on that. So a lot of potential, and with it comes growing pains, obviously, that we've got to deal with going forward. The update of the terminal project, that building will be fully enclosed in the first part of December, but the interior is already starting to take shape. But if it gets fully enclosed, it can be worked on throughout the course of winter, so that's good news. And the airport is going to try to arrange some tours for us as well as airport board members sometime, probably in November. Todd Cyrus said he'll work out the details and that, see what we might work, if it's a public work session, if we have too many council members, whatever, but somehow give some tours for those of us that are very interested in that project. So exciting board meeting, they're very dedicated staff, or very dedicated people on that airport board.
Thank you. Any further liaison reports?
Mayor, I'm just gonna let, it's catchment basin. Just so, in case they're reporting on it.
All right. Any announcements? Councilman Paulson, did you have something? Okay, sorry, I just saw a motion out there, corner of my eyes. There is no need to go into executive session. With that, the chair will entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilman Tupper. Seconded by Councilman Danforth. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Good night and God bless.